Greetings, guys, girls, non-binary pals. Welcome back to another Christmas countdown video where every day I will be uploading a video and your present is my presents. I don't know how that became the intro, but it is. So a couple of months back, I made a video about Girl Defined, or more specifically, Kristen of Girl Defined, talking about women things. And I said that if that video got 10,000 likes, I would buy their book, and I would read their book, and I would film a video. And it got 10k likes, and so, here we are. A disclaimer before I get started is that I did not buy this book from them or their shop or Amazon or anything like that. I bought this secondhand through eBay and it cost me £2. So they didn't get any money and it didn't cost me anything really either. So don't worry everyone, I didn't give them money. Now, when I bought this book, I intended on reading the whole thing and making one video about the whole book. However, upon reading it, I had way too much to say, and there's no way I can fit all of it into one video. That, and I didn't want to read anymore. So, I have read the first part of this book. It is called Femininity Gone Wrong, and it is 3 chapters, and I have so much to say about this part of the book that this video is just going to be Girl Defined, God's Radical Design for Beauty, Femininity, and Identity, Part 1. If you would like to see another video about part 2 of the book, Getting Back to God's Design, featuring the chapter Gender You Are Oh So Magnificent, then give this a like. And at 10k likes, maybe I'll have the motivation to read the next part of this book without shoving my head through a brick wall. But I'm gonna need to know there's interest in order to gather the motivation to put myself through that, you know? Before we get into it, I would like to take a moment to thank today's patron of the day, Wolf Avatar. You have been around for a really long time and I appreciate your support so much. Thank you so much for everything. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you would like to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/savvycat or click the link in the description. I appreciate it. Overall, this book, it is about their journey to self-discovery and becoming girls defined by God outside of secular society and counterfeit femininity, which is so heavily forced upon everybody. The first chapter is Bullied by the Big Bad Checklist, and it opens with each of them talking about their experience going to a modeling agency. And it's really painful to read. Like, aside from me just like hating the subject matter of this book and really disagreeing with most of what they say, it's so boring and so badly written. You can tell they're not authors. This is not what they do. Because it's written the way you learn how to write like a recount in year 5, where there's like so much unnecessary information and then such little interesting vocabulary. It's all very bland, there's no color, there's nothing interesting, and it was so hard to read. So then they go back into Kristen telling the story of how she went shopping with her mom when she was 12, and she was quite tall and slim and blonde, and this older woman came up to her and her mom and was like, "You are tall, blonde, and skinny, and a child. How would you like to be a model at my modeling agency for children? You can come live in our house with other models, and we will raise you to be a good model who can sell things, and you can have a career in modeling." Which, it's so insane that that's a thing that happens. Like, some lady can just approach a child like, "You're beautiful. I would like you to live in my house with other children so I can raise you to take photos and sell things." But regardless of how fucked up that is as a premise and the fact that actually happens, that planted a seed in Kristen's mind that, oh my gosh, me, a model? I'd never thought of that. I never thought that I was beautiful enough for that. I didn't think that was something that was possible for me. And it implanted this idea that beauty is important and something she should be proud of and strive towards. And then from there, they go into talking about how that is what society wants of women. Society tells us that our worth is largely determined by our beauty and our desirability. There are all these like beauty standards and things just forced upon us constantly. We're constantly forced to question our worth. We are constantly like, am I the prettiest person in the room? How can I be as pretty as that person? And the checklist that is given to women is never ending and ever changing. As little girls, it seems the first insecurity we pick up revolves around our looks. Then we grow a little older and worry about our talents, then our jobs, then our husbands, then our kids, then our houses, then our success, and overall our worth. We're constantly asking ourselves if we're good enough, if we have all the right ducks in the rows. What started as a simple, am I as pretty as Sally when we were 12, turns into an identity crisis when we're 30. From the time we were little girls until now, our culture has been feeding us messages of what womanhood is all about. We each took note of what sounded good to us. We internalized a running identity checklist. From the first moment a woman questions her identity, she begins wondering about her womanhood and whether she measures up. Our big bad identity checklist is always growing, but what makes things even more complicated is that the rules are always changing. And this entire section that I just read, I absolutely agree. This is absolutely a real thing and a real problem that obviously we all go through. We are all told a set of rules that we have to measure up to. We do get told that a lot of our value and a lot of our worth relies entirely on how beautiful we are and how desirable we are. We do have a lot of weight on our shoulders about family and getting married and when appropriate times is to do that. And then there is the whole now push and pull thing of like being like, you have to be traditional, you have to work as a full-time CEO kind of thing, you know? People feel a lot of pressure and you can't really ever do anything right. And as I say, and it does change all the time. Like with beauty standards, the ideal body type changes year by year. What? They've just said heroin chic is the new in fashion body type. Body types aren't a fucking trend, right? That's so gross. You can't do that. And so yeah, this list that women get given that you keep trying to fulfill and try to work to in order to feel accepted and valued as a member of society is so stressful and it's so difficult and it's exhausting. And I agree. We are on the same page here. I get it. I agree. Yes. And it just reminds me so much that like at our core, all of us, we are women, you know? They go about this in a really weird way that is really unhelpful. It's interesting that, you know, they have these experiences, obviously, and they are aware of them and they acknowledge them, but they just turn the absolute wrong way to combat them. And by combating them, I mean victim blaming. This takes us into the next chapter, which is honestly one of the most ignorant and disrespectful things I have ever read. So that's just a heads up for you. It is titled Blonde Bombshells Don't Have What It Takes, and it largely revolves around Marilyn Monroe. Now, it starts off on the right foot. It's detailing her life, like her childhood, and how difficult it was and how traumatic it was. It talks about how when she was born, she was quickly put into foster care before being reunited with her mother, who was mentally unstable and abused drugs. So she got put back into foster care and she was passed around and she was abused. And at the age of 16, she got married in order to get out of that environment. She needed an out of the system, and that was her way out, was to get married. And it talks about just how difficult that entire beginning of her life is and how tragic it is. And that then she obviously came into fame and wealth, and she was known as a sex icon and like the most beautiful woman in the world. And I was reading all of this and I was like, yeah, this is true. I'm glad that, you know, you're telling her story, you're telling the stuff that a lot of people don't know about her, because it wasn't, you know, like what people promoted, obviously. And it needs to be talked about. People do need to know about it. But I also was sitting there like, they're gonna say something that's gonna make me so mad. So I was like taking deep breaths, preparing to get to the part that was gonna make me throw my book across the room. And then I got there. Marilyn is portrayed as the all-American dream girl. She's an icon millions of girls and women look up to. However, her short life is a tragic example of one woman's endless search for identity. The more she searched for happiness, the longer her checklist became. If one thing didn't work, she tried something new. Beauty, fame, money, marriage, sex, drugs, popularity, you name it, she tried it. Her entire life was driven by what she thought would bring her fulfillment as a woman. She's the epitome of a girl defined by her culture, and she's suffered greatly as a result. Now, shut the fuck up. Saying that she was doing all of those things to find fulfillment as a woman is just untrue. She was forced into this life because she didn't have another option. She grew up being mistreated and abused, and she didn't have time to develop her own self as a person. She wasn't allowed to do that. She had to do everything that she could to survive, you know? She didn't have a say in anything. She didn't choose to become a model or an actress or any of that. That was a life that was given to her. She did all of those things to escape that. She did all of that to try to get away from it, and she couldn't. She had a really fucking difficult life. And the fact that you are implying that, like, those were all her decisions and she could have just not made them and then everything would have been okay is so fucking disgusting. Like, yes, it is the fault of, you know, like, society and beauty standards and wealth and fame and all of that. It is a result of that, but that's not her fault. That's not on her shoulders. She was used by men in order for them to profit off of her. Because she was beautiful and she fit the standards, they took advantage of that and used her in order for them to make money. She didn't want that. This wasn't her searching for fame and fortune to feel fulfilled. That's not what fucking happened. And even if it was, it wouldn't be her fault. As you said earlier, these are expectations and things that are put onto women, and it can be really hard to try to break out of this belief system that we've been put into. Look at yourself. You won't even kiss your boyfriend before you get married because it's within the community, the society, and the guidelines that you grew up in. Even if it's something that you really want, or if there's something that you really don't want to do, but it is heavily enforced and pushed upon you in your church community, you're gonna fucking do it, even if it makes you miserable. I know, because I've read some of your book, and I know that's what happens. Just because she didn't live within your idea of what perfect femininity is and what would have made her happy doesn't mean shit. It's just so insane that, like, they take her story and they take this and they twist it into saying that, like, this wouldn't have happened to her if she'd have had, like, a godly upbringing and had chosen to define herself by God and the Bible rather than what society told her to be, even though, like, she was literally being abused and manipulated and taken advantage of. She couldn't do shit anyway. But also, she was Jewish. Like, she was a religious person. She was a godly woman. Maybe not your God. And she also wanted to have the normal traditional life. She wanted that. She couldn't have that. People don't have a choice. I know that you grew up privileged and with, like, this just complete, like, bubble around your head of, like, not understanding that not everyone has the same circumstances as you. But she didn't have the choice. So, like, how dare you? With all of this being said, and on top of, you know, them detailing her traumatic upbringing, they ask the question of where did Marilyn's life take its first wrong turn, and somehow came to the conclusion that it most likely happened when many of us take our first wrong turn. It all started the moment she allowed culture to define her womanhood. The way that they, like, genuinely, live in this bubble, and they talk about this as though, like, her traumatic childhood and everything she went to played no part in who she was as an adult is insane. Like, the point her life went wrong was when she decided to be beautiful and not, you know, when she spent her entire life being abused and taken advantage of by men. No, it's because she chose that she desired being desirable. What is wrong with you? Like, how do you reach that conclusion? You literally said that she did everything she could to escape a traumatic childhood, and you don't think that is the turning point of her life? You don't think her getting married at 16 to leave an abusive system and household is what was the turning point of her life? You think it was her deciding to become a model, which she didn't even decide? Obviously, these things are all very much within your control. Marilyn obviously could have made different decisions. Her life could have gone really differently. She could have just grown up in a happy household and gotten married and settled down with a good Christian man and popped out a couple of kids. I don't know why she didn't make that decision for herself. It would have been so easy, just like it was so easy for Bethany and Kristen to do. Because unlike Marilyn, they grew up in a Christian family with involved parents, which obviously makes no difference to adult experiences at all. It was society, it was misogyny, it was beauty standards, it was all of that, and blaming the victims is never going to help anyone or anything. Nothing will change if you continue to say that women are the problem with women, because it's just not fucking true. I don't understand how we are on the same page, how we are looking at the same information, how we literally think the same thing about beauty standards and society and how fucked up and awful they are, and yet come to two such drastically different conclusions. I don't know how your brain can go to the place of the solution being to just blame all women as opposed to wanting to break down the structures that have been put in place. From here until the rest of the chapter, they are constantly bringing her up as a lesson to be learned. And it's really fucking gross. They just constantly keep bringing her up as like a cautionary tale. And they outline their life, which, you know, was as difficult as Marilyn's, obviously, where they were homeschooled with their 7 siblings in a Christian household, and their parents were very cautious about the people they were spending time with, so they signed them up for church activities so that they would have Christian friends and only Christian influence, because that's obviously the most important thing in the world. And so through working at the Christian bookshop and doing other Christian church activities, they made friends, and then they had a friend group of around 30 people, which remained intact throughout the entirety of high school because, you know, they were all living in this community, they were all doing church activities together, so they all bonded, had that in common, had their shared godliness. But once people started leaving for college, people started sinning because freedom means sin, right? Leaving for college meant a lot of their friends like left God behind. And I find it so interesting reading this because they're talking about like, they're calling it an epidemic of how, you know, they and their friends who stayed in their hometown within their church community stayed godly women. They stayed in this environment, in this mindset. And they're like, but all my friends who left have left God behind. They're all becoming liberated. They're all going to parties and drinking and kissing boys and having boyfriends. And I don't understand how they went off this path. And it's so funny to see them just like blaming the outside world and the influence of society rather than acknowledging the fact that maybe people don't want to be put in a box their whole life. You can do both. There is a medium. There is a reason why so many people who go so hard into like partying and stuff like really quickly come from strict religious backgrounds. It's because they've had such heavy restrictions put on them their whole lives. Once they leave that, they just want to break away from it. If you have like more moderate religion where it's got a bit more freedom and no set, very strong, strict rules, people are much more likely to stick around. If you're telling people that their God doesn't want them to like have fun, follow their desires, love and care for people, won't accept you, etc., they're much less likely to stay. If you say that God just wants the best for you, will accept and love you no matter what, and just wants you to find your own path, more people are gonna believe in God and stay on their path of godliness. It's just not in the way that you want them to and that you deem appropriate and acceptable. With this, we move into the next chapter, which is titled Counterfeit Femininity, You Have Done Me Wrong. The next chapter largely revolves around what they call the 3 pillars of counterfeit femininity, which I will tell you about in a moment. But I first need to tell you a story. The last time Bethany and I went to the grocery store, I noticed something. Every magazine cover was filled with images of beautiful, confident, fashionable, and sexy women, portrayed as having it all. If you are only now just noticing this, then I doubt you have ever been into a grocery shop ever in your life. Because magazines, unfortunately, have looked like that forever. That is what we grow up with. That is what we are around. And it's awful and it's horrific and it's sad, but it's how it is. She goes on to talk about how they all have titles like how to be sexy, how to make him want you, things like that, you know, like the typical things that have been on magazines forever. And she talks about how that's bad and how it's influencing women and it's telling women that these are things that they should be striving for, that this is what they should be existing for and basing their worth around. And it's bad to promote that. She's talking about how that's bad and that's not helpful and it's unhealthy and we shouldn't be exposing girls to that and women shouldn't strive for that. And honey, we're on the same page. This is what we've been saying forever. This is not a new fight. This is not an original thought. It's just so funny that they hate feminists. They view liberation and liberating women as the worst thing in the entire world for some reason. And so thus they hate feminists and they hate the feminist fight. And they think that this is what we want and this is what we are creating. When this is what we've been fighting against for so long. Ask anyone, any woman, if they like having every magazine about how they need to be hotter, lose more weight, do this, keep a guy, do this, look like this. No one fucking wants that. But what's insane to me is that they somehow make that woman's fault. They say that they put these women on the magazines to have them being like, you want what I have. You'll be happy like me if you get what I have. Why aren't you mad at the people who put them on the cover with that slogan? Why aren't you mad at the people who made them think they needed that? These magazines exist for the male gaze. We are told that our existence exists for the male gaze. Whose attention do you think it's grabbing when you see those magazine covers, right? They are made by men, for men, and for women to want so that men will look at them as desirable. Not consciously, but subconsciously, that is kind of what we've been told for forever. And at the very core of all of that is capitalism, right? The women on the covers are there to say, you want to look like this, you need to look like this, you need to do all of this, because it means that they can sell things. That's the point. If women are kept to be insecure and all feeling like they have to look like this one very specific thing in order to have value, it means they can sell makeup, they can sell diet pills, they can sell so much to you. And it works, and that's not women's fault. And the women who buy into it and the women who fall into its trap, etc., are also not to blame because they are victims of the patriarchy, as we all are. People who promote it and say that it's good, obviously, yeah, we can get mad at them and we can be upset with them and also understand that they are victims to it too, you know? It's a double layer thing. It's kind of like these two girls, Kristen and Bethany. I really dislike them and their morals and I hate what they're pushing and they're actively harming people. And at the same time, I feel really sorry for them, you know? I disagree with them and I think they're bad people. And I also understand how they got here. In a world that they claim to be built by men, run by men, it's really funny that somehow none of this is men's fault. Men built the world, men do everything, men are in charge, men have all the power, but women are the problem. How does that make sense? After this, we finally learn what the 3 pillars of counterfeit femininity are. And the first one is liberation. And if you need a reminder of the exact definition of liberation, which they give to us here, it is: liberation is about being free. From what? Primarily free from roles in marriage, free from the differences between men and women, free from the Bible's teachings on gender, free from anything that distinguishes what it means to be male and what it means to be female. One dictionary defines the word liberation as the removal of traditional or sexual attitudes, etc., we translate that to mean out with the old, in with the new. This is the 21st century. Women shouldn't be tied down to traditional views. And so that's bad, obviously. Liberation, bad, gross. We don't want any of that. We learn about liberation through a story that Bethany tells of acknowledging and demolishing her own liberation pillar. And this story is, like, this is when I start to kind of get sad and feel really bad for them. Because the story is quite, like, it's quite awful. Of when she was younger, she worked at the church. She had like a job and she really enjoyed it and she felt fulfilled. She achieved a lot of things and she really wanted to keep doing it. This is what she wanted to do with her life. And she had these thoughts of like, I can be a mother and do this. I can be a wife and do this. This fulfills me. This makes me happy. I don't want to give all of this up just to be a mother one day. That was her thought process. And that's cool. Good for you. I'm glad that you found something that made you happy and made you feel fulfilled. And then one day, one of her male friends asked if she would give it all up to be a mother. If one day she would stop her work and become a mother. And she got defensive and she was like, why would you ask me something like that? What's wrong with you? But that led to her like spiraling and questioning herself and her values and her life and where she stood and what she wanted. And she came to the conclusion that she had made herself like too ambitious and was falling into this liberation trap. She convinced herself that the only reason she wanted to do this job and the only reason that it felt good to succeed and achieve things was because society has said that women need to be more like men. And so she spent all this time convincing herself that this isn't what she was meant to do. She wasn't allowed to enjoy it. She wasn't allowed to like it or feel pride or anything over that because that's not a woman's job. That's not what God wants. That's what liberals want. That's what liberation is. And liberation is destroying femininity. And it's so fucking sad. Women are people, you know? Like, we are people and we have emotions and thoughts and desires. And it is just a human thing to want to do things, to want to achieve things, to spend your time doing what you love, whether that be being a stay-at-home mom or working or both or whatever. Like, you can find whatever you want fulfilling. I don't know why you have to convince yourself that you don't want to do things, even if you do. If they aren't harming you and they are bringing you actual joy and fulfillment, why are you forcing yourself to stop? I don't know how we can spend this entire book talking about how miserable society makes people, and then you talk about how miserable your alternative makes you. Like, you talk about it like it was freeing. Like, I let go and I moved on and now I'm, you know, happy and carefree. But like, you were happy before. Don't make yourself stop doing things that you love because it doesn't fit your idea of what femininity is. That's exactly what you say you have a problem with. Why would I let anyone dictate what femininity is to me? Why do I have to live by anyone's rules, whether it be society or gods and religion? Like, why would I do that? Let alone the fact that you're using he. It's like, he wants this from me. He wants me to be a woman like this. Well, fuck him, all right? I'm not letting any he tell me what femininity is, all right? No, absolutely not. Why can't I define what femininity is? Why can't I choose my own path and my own life? The next pillar is independence, and this story is told through Kristen, who grew up being very competitive and a very independent soul. And so when she went to get married, she really struggled because she really didn't like the idea of giving up control. I took pride in my ability to fend for myself. I was a capable woman and I didn't need a man's help, especially if that man tried to tell me what to do. It's not that I hated men, because I didn't. I actually really liked them. I was pro-marriage, pro-family, pro all that stuff. So what was this feeling inside of me? Why did I cringe at the idea of giving up control, or releasing my independence, of needing others, of accepting help, of needing advice? That's because being controlled by another person isn't fun. You shouldn't have to give up your control to another person. You shouldn't give up your control to another person. You are a person. You don't have to give up anything. You should ask for help and accept help. Absolutely. That's a thing that a lot of people struggle with. But in terms of giving up control of your life, you don't have to do that. That being pro family and wanting to get married is not the same as giving up your freedom. She talks about like how it's like necessary to give up control to your husband and have them like dictate everything, and then refers to that as being a team. So it's like when she wanted to do something differently, she would speak up and say, I don't like this. And then she's like, that's me fighting him. And that's not helpful. That's how marriages break. So what I do is I give up complete control and let him dictate everything. And then it's teamwork. He's like, now we're paddling the boat together. No, now he's paddling the boat and you're sitting behind him while he rows you somewhere. Compromise is so much healthier. Compromise and communication. That's really the best foundation. You shouldn't be doing everything one person wants and not what the other, you know? Like, you need a middle ground. The third and final pillar is sexual freedom. This section largely revolves around the idea that bodies are sexual. There are a couple of pages here where they just talk about how they are repulsed by the fact that their friend encouraged them to wear a bikini and said it was empowering, because wearing a bikini is society's idea of sexual freedom being shoved in everyone's faces. Because naturally, the only reason people wear bikinis is for the male gaze, obviously. There's no other reason. The first and most important thing to note is that bodies are not sexual. Nudity in itself is not sexual. The only time a body is sexual is if it is in sexual context. You are the one who is looking at a body and implying that it is sexual when it's not. It's just someone existing in a body. We all have bodies. There's no sexual context. It's not sexual. It's just a body. The more you say bodies are sexual, the longer they will continue to be viewed that way. And the longer people will use it as an excuse to take advantage of people, like the "she asked for it" excuse, right? Because if we are pushing the idea that showing skin is sexual, that's then pushing the idea that showing skin is asking for it. And it's then giving people an excuse to get away with abusing people who show their skin because they're dressing in a sexual nature, which just isn't true. It is on you to decide if you think bodies are sexual or not. That is a decision that you get to make, and you have made the decision to sexualize people without their consent. There is a very complex discussion here to be had about intention and desire and subconscious, because it is all very interwoven and confusing, and it's a long, complicated, philosophical type conversation that comes up with like this sort of stuff, and then also comes up with like sex work about like, you know, we are all products of the environment that we live in. We are all products of the society that we are brought into. And obviously we live in a patriarchal society. We have beauty standards forced upon us. We are told that we need to be desirable, and our value is very much linked into that. We are constantly told that we are sexual objects, and we are being sexualized a lot from a very young age. We are influenced by the media that we consume, by the people we are around, by everything. That is what makes us who we are, to a large degree, right? So when I wear a bikini, for example, I am doing that for me, because I am someone who has struggled with body image and eating disorders my whole life, and I find it empowering to wear a bikini when I go to the beach, because it reminds me that I am in charge of my body and I don't have to hide. There is no shame in existing in my body and showing my body. And if I don't do that, and if I hide like I want to, then I'm just enforcing this idea that I'm meant to hide, and I don't want to listen to that part of myself, you know? I am not doing that for attention. I'm not doing that for the male gaze or for approval of anyone. However, I cannot deny that there will always be the looming thought and idea that, you know, I want people to look at me and I want people to validate me. You know what I mean? Like, we all have that seed planted in us because we are all brought up in this society. I don't want to be sexualized. I don't want men to be ogling over me and staring at me. I don't want to be catcalled. I don't want any of that stuff. However, at the same time, there is always that tiny little seed in your brain that is like, but like, Don't you want to be desired? Isn't that not what you want? Is that not what you want? And it's so awful and conflicting and such an awful struggle and battle to have of like, I know that I am doing this for me, but also I've been put in the position of doing it for me because of the way that my body has been viewed. It's such a complicated thing, right? So like, I am wearing this bikini for me, but I am wearing it for me because I've been told that I need to be ashamed of my body by looking this certain way. So they have impacted me doing this because of how they've made me view myself. And if I don't do it like that, if I don't wear a bikini and I do hide my body because I don't want to have people look at me, then I'm still doing what they want me to do. And I'm still falling trapped for that because now I'm letting them dictate my life. No matter what I do, a man has influenced my decision, and that pisses me off so much. I don't want to allow rules and society and anyone else to dictate how I view myself and what I do with my body. So I'm gonna do what I want to do and what makes me happy and what I believe is the right decision for myself. There is no decision in which another person has not played a part in. No matter what I do, my environment, the people around me, everything, my entire life has led up to me making that decision. So I'm not gonna sit here and question it, and I'm not gonna think about all the ethics and everything involved in everything. That's what we watch The Good Place for. As long as we remember, you don't have to be desired to be loved. Beauty is subjective, and you can do whatever the fuck you want with your body and with your life as long as you aren't hurting anybody. Then that is all that matters. Bethany, Kristen, Girl Defines. You do not have to wear a bikini. You do not have to have sex out of marriage. You don't have to kiss your boyfriend. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. If that's what empowers you within your femininity and that's what makes you comfortable and what makes you happy, then good for you. I'm proud of you. I love that for you. However, that's not even how you come across though. You've talked about how much you've had to give up in order to live this life that is defined by God, and you don't have to do that. You can't deny that this book is so hypocritical and full of you being like, don't do this, don't fall for society's trap, don't let society brainwash you, don't do this isn't what femininity is. And then just go and say the exact same thing. The goal shouldn't be just taking yourself out of one box and putting yourself in another. The goal should be finding aspects of yourself wherever you find them. Don't restrict yourself, because all that does is cause you pain. You've said multiple times that you feel shame and regret over your past actions. You don't have to do that. If you don't have strict rules, you don't feel guilt and shame over breaking them because you didn't break anything. You can still have your faith and you can still have God as your guide and also do the things you will not let yourself do. If your God is truly great, he will allow you to do what you want. God created you, right? He created you with all of your desires and your ambitions and everything that you have. That was given to you by God, right? There is a purpose. You have a purpose. There is a meaning to your life and everything that you have been given. So why are you denying yourself of following those? If you have desires, isn't denying them denying the desires that God gave you? If you've been given opportunities and you deny them because it's not fitting this role of what a biblical woman is that not denying the opportunities that God has created for you? I don't know how religion works entirely, but me personally, that is how I would view it, and that is how I believe other Christians view it. And if that seems like a much happier and healthier way to live, is just live life as you wish and thank God for it along the way. That's really all you have to do, I think. He wants you to be happy and grateful, right? Is that not the point? You make God sound like such a dick. Like, that's the thing, is like, religion is like, it's fine. I don't have an issue with it. People just kind of use it as a philosophy. I talk about the universe all the time, and it's kind of a similar thing, right? I'm like, the universe will guide me. Everything has a purpose. I'm like that a lot, and I realize that a lot of people kind of do the same thing, but with a God. Like, I understand religion and people having a God and following that and using it as like a way to feel okay and like everything will be okay and, you know, someone has a plan for you. It'll work out. I totally understand that. However, people like you make God just seem like the fucking worst. The worst. Because all he wants to do is, like, make women two-dimensional house objects. Fuck him then. You know, you've not done a really good job of selling me on your religion, right? Anyway, this has been Femininity Gone Wrong. If you want part 2 for this, then drop a like and I will get on to torturing myself immediately. Yeah, so I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that it was worth it. All my pain and suffering has paid off. A massive thank you to my Sprout and Above patrons whose names are up on the screen right now. And a huge thank you to my Kiwi Cat patrons. Wolf, Toulouse, Bobby, Josh, Mandy, Robbie, Ikazel, Jessica, Eldo, Ida, Queer Corey, Corey Go Lightly, Mick McKenna, Anna, Raven, Cosmic Octopus, and Danielle. I love and appreciate you all so much. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/savvycat, or you can click the top link in the description. For as little as £1 a month, you get my videos a day early, as well as podcasts a week early. And then for £3 and up, you get things such as outtakes, vlogs, live streams, etc. Your support means the absolute world. I appreciate it immensely. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, The Queer Kiwi, and Twitter, That Queer Kiwi. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow. Stay safe. Keep fighting. I love you. Mwah. When you close your eyes, you replace the darkness with light. You replace the monsters with fairies. You replace the hate with love. I'll see you tomorrow.